Xiaomi made quite a splash with what they called a concept phone, a phone that, they hope, will give us a glimpse into a future where smartphones are slabs of glass that project the magic that lies within. Considering we don't have the technology yet that can make our phones achieve this, they went with the best we can do right now, a phone that is all display, all the time. I've been using it for some time now, trying to figure out if a phone that is basically entire display actually makes sense for our daily lives. After all, doing this to a phone means that some changes have to be made to the very way that we see and use our smartphones. Does it work, and is this the future of smartphones? Let us find out in this, our Xiaomi Mi Mix review. To make room for the massive display, Xiaomi had to move many of the current conventions of the smartphone around, but to make the shell holding it all together just as appealing, the company made this large 6.4-inch phone utilize full ceramic for its material. The result is a very shiny, very sleek block that is highly eye-catching and, honestly, really slippery. I've almost dropped the phone multiple times as a result. It seems a little ironic to me that this phone is supposed to be all about the display, yet it can be broken quite easily due to its large size and slippery body. Luckily, there is a premium leather case that Xiaomi made a big deal of, citing its high quality and the premium price for it. Even more luckily, it is included in the box. There was little time between my actually using the phone and then sliding it in the case for safety. That said, plenty of what makes a smartphone recognizable remains, at least on the sides and the back. Prominent power and volume buttons on the side are easy to feel for, and the rear elements of the camera and the fingerprint reader are a bit lower on the upper third than might be typical. This phone does come with a headphone jack up top, and the USB-C port on the bottom is flanked by the microphone and surprisingly good speaker. As near bezel-less display has one big caveat right off the bat: it is only a 1080p display. Technically, it is actually 2040 x 1080, which makes it have an aspect ratio of 17:9 and slightly wider than the typical video frame. Though this almost full HD is not bad by any means, flagship devices have made this kind of choice feel like more of an aberration than it probably should be. For a phone like the Xiaomi Mi Mix, Quad HD would have really elevated what is already a sight to behold. With the 91.3% screen-to-body ratio, there is so much real estate for just about any form of entertainment, or work, if that is what you want to do, and everything displays really well. The IPS screen gets quite bright even under daylight, but there is also a lot of control over the backlight that Xiaomi put in, because bringing the brightness down to 0 seemingly shuts it completely off. Its saturation has also been bumped up a bit to make it a little more pleasing to the eye. As a result, gaming and streaming YouTube videos on the Xiaomi Mi Mix has been very enjoyable, to a fault. Despite all that this phone is trying to introduce outside of the typical smartphone box, much of what we would expect remains. The Xiaomi Mi Mix sports the Snapdragon 821 and either 4 or 6 GB of RAM depending on the version. As a result, the MIUI speeds through all of elements smoothly and without stutters or issues in and out of applications. Though MIUI is not my favorite experience, I cannot deny how well it is presented and how easy it is to enjoy all of my apps despite the Xiaomi UI that splatters it all over its home screens and not in an app drawer. As a small aside, I would like to give credit to Xiaomi and, indeed, to Chinese manufacturers at large these days for putting higher capacities of RAM in their new phones. Though the version that I have is the 4GB RAM edition, having a couple more should only mean better performance in terms of recent tapes caching and multitasking. And to that end, the higher capacity for the RAM is helped by another big addition: larger storage. The base model of the Mix comes with an 128GB of onboard storage to make up for the fact that it does not have a micro SD card slot. Go up to the more premium 6GB edition and that amount gets even larger at 256GB. This is something that definitely needs to become more common, even in this current landscape where micro SD cards are more common and Google wants to make you pay for more storage or just use their cloud backup services. Another good portion to the hardware was a little surprising: the speaker. Audio through the headphone jack is already standardly good, without the extra power of an amp or the customization options that can come with a dedicated DAC. However, I was actually pleasantly surprised to find that the bottom-mounted speaker next to the USB-C port was pretty loud and had some body to the sound. While this is not a particularly common situation, I found myself watching or playing content on the mix without any headphones connected, simply because the screen was the focus of my testing. But when doing so, I got accustomed to just relying on the speaker and didn't find myself really reaching for my earbuds. It isn't super loud and won't do particularly well in very high noise environments, but indoors and in typical situations at home it was definitely more than adequate. The camera spec of the Mi Mix are less important for this concept phone compared to where they were located, at least in the case of the front-facing camera, as we have mentioned it a few times already in this review. That said, the specs are nothing to snooze on. The main camera is a 16-megapixel shooter at f/2.0 aperture, while the front-facing camera is a 5-megapixel shooter and is located below the screen this time. We have had a couple examples in the past of bottom-mounted cameras, so this isn't exactly a new thing. However, the trade-offs for this location are apparent the moment the camera is opened. An upward angle is just not great for selfies. And even then, when reaching with, in particular, one's right hand in order to hit the shutter button, one's thumb gets right in the field of view and ruins the picture. These are annoyances, sure, but at least Xiaomi understood this and made the camera app always reversible. Just turn the phone upside down and it acts like a regular smartphone for selfies. All things said, the front-facing camera is decent, not very high achieving, and has a pretty aggressive beauty mode on at default. And finally, we have software, which is actually very much affected by the fact that this phone is only available in China. Not only did that mean HSPA Plus for my mobile data, but also a translated but not localized version of the MIUI. Xiaomi was able to get Google Play services installed on this and any other Western review units, but because the phone is not meant for our markets, there will be no global MIUI to review here. With that in mind, we take a look at what we can in the MIUI, the app-less version of Android that is actually very popular in the Chinese market. Xiaomi evolves their operating system based on user feedback quite frequently, and the result seems to be a pretty smooth iteration of the Android ecosystem. While the tedium of putting all my applications in folders strewn about their home screens is something I may never get used to, actually getting around the interface was a largely painless experience.